Welcome to episode 7 of Agency Intensive. I'm Richard Hill, your host. In this episode, I speak with Ady Collins, CEO of Untitled Commerce. Firmly rooted in the e-commerce space here in the UK, Ady has held a host of senior leadership positions before he established Untitled Commerce as a serious player in the integration space. We chat the mission behind Untitled Commerce, scaling teams using global talent. Is that something you guys are doing right now? Niching down your business to offer a very specialist service, and the issues around offering a full service proposition. And Ady shares the personal story of his cancer diagnosis and how he pushed through, and so much more in this one. Now, if you do me one favour, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Hi Ady, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me in.
No problem. You're not had to come that far, have you? That's quite rare. Most of the guests.
I think it's going to be different on the way back because the weather's coming in, but it's been a nice sunny drive in actually. So as I was saying to you just before we went live, it was hard not to carry on to Skeg Vegas, Skegness, and have a day on the beach.
Yeah, so Ady is, about 90 minutes away, and from where our office is and where we are right now in the studio, we're about 45 minutes from the coast, aren't we? The lovely Skegness that a lot of us are quite fond of, fondish memories.
Good and bad reasons, yeah.
So thanks for coming on the show. Obviously, we work both in e-commerce, so it's great to have you on. I'm looking forward to getting stuck in, but I think before we do get into the nitty-gritty, it'd be great for you to introduce yourself and how you got into the world of agencies and e-commerce.
So I suppose, in short, kind of by accident. So my career started out kind of 25 years ago in a corporate world. I was experienced, started in the mainframe programming world, so I come from quite a different path to most people, entrepreneurs that end up with an agency with a more creative kind of bent. I'm not really that. I'm the dry engine room, oily kind of coder from the past into a business analyst. But did kind of just shy of a decade in corporate world. Ended up accidentally really through a redundancy in an agency, a local agency at the time was called Chemistry Digital. Stayed there 5 years, that later got acquired by the Publicis Group. And it was inside there that I kind of really have realised that that's what suits me. The speed, the flexibility, fluidity that comes with agency life. To strip away some of that, without stripping away too much, but strip away some of the red tape and the politics and all the rest of it. And I just found a sweet spot that I came alive, and I was doing well there. I kind of moved up into ops director kind of world, follow the sun development, where I had teams in most time zones in that business through the acquisition we had through the Publicis Group, because they had deep pockets and teams all around the world. And it was kind of from there, I never kind of looked back. I went from there, I went to another agency, Orange Bus, that was acquired by Capita. So I did a lot of digital transformation in the public sector. Then moved from there. I did a bit of a divergent move to a role that I thought was going to be something it kind of wasn't really, but kept closer to home with my children. I ended up in a role that was back into consultancy and account directorship again, that felt a little bit more SME, corporate. So kind of came away from there about 18 months in. A chance opportunity conversation with Dave Wiltshire that I'd tried to pass work over to him in the past when he was just managing Juno. I'd, at the time, when I was at Prodigious, running that agency, I tried to pass some work over. I never got a response back from him. But then his name jumped into my head while I was in this role that I wasn't quite enjoying, and thought, I want to get back into Nottingham to be closer to family. I wanted to get back into the agency space. I'll start there. His name kind of just popped up in my head. At 3 a.m, I messaged him on LinkedIn. He messaged right back, which I felt was strange.
At 3 a.m?
Yeah, I thought it was strange at the time. I jump forward 5 years. We know each other very, very well. I realised that's not strange. No, that's not strange at all. So we've had many a conversation in the middle of the night since then. But anyway, so I ended up. I didn't actually know about Patchworks at that point, and Patchworks then was a hybrid agency plus platform, iPaaS platform. So I was very much running, went in, became the COO, I was very much running the agency side. So it was the client-facing delivery and support side of things there. And it was through us kind of growing through, we became a little bit COVID-rich, really. Everyone wanted to get online and trade online in e-commerce and needed to do it quickly. We had an iPaaS at Patchworks that did that. So we decided, instead of just doing the bootstrapping that had been doing for many years, we'd take investment. There was a hunger for it. And we went on a journey for the last 4 or 5 years, growing and scaling and transforming it to be pure iPaaS platform, so just a SaaS-based product business. And all that while, I was still very much focused on the agency side of the business. Thought, well, the dropping off point is clearly there's going to be a gap, and a known gap, a required gap. The agency space is quite distracting if you're trying to build a business, build a product business. So that needed to divide, and I was in the best place. I'd lived and breathed the iPaaS integration space, delivery and support. I brought in the support model and the different tiers of support that work well in integration for all of our many customers. Well, this gap is perfect for me to fill. So fast forward to December, January, this January just come. We spun up Knotted Commerce, myself and co-founder in Tom Brewer. He was the head of sales at Patchworks.
Yeah.
So between the two of us, we'd seen.
So he left Patchworks as well.
Yeah. And it was a conditioned thing. We saw it. We knew when we brought the VCs in. We was in the senior management. Yeah. We made the agreement that was where it was going to go. We were going to turn that into the product-based business. Yeah. Because it was better to then hand off the configuration and the support work into the agency space. Yeah. It was at that point I went, well, I suit that space more. That's where my life has been, and that sweet spot has been looking after being a real front line with customers. So we all knew very early on that was what we was going to do, and kind of jumped in and built Knotted Commerce start of this year. It's going very well already. We're kind of we're trending around the £1 million year mark already. Which is not good enough. Not too bad in our first year.
And it's only August.
Yeah, and I think that comes from such a platform that we've had at Patchworks, both in terms of knowing the platform to work on, the technical platform, but also the platform in terms of the contacts, knowing the businesses. I've been embarrassingly lucky to be sat there with big founders of the lounge underwear, Shules, Gymsharks, Castles, Belstaffs, all these huge businesses, and you learn so much dealing with them that it was a no-brainer at that point to go, right, when the platform becomes just purely a platform inside one business and the agency needs to hive off, there's no one better than me to go off and do that. And with Tom, as well as the co-founder, knowing the front end of that journey, how to pick out what the customer needs through the sales cycle, because he was a sales guy through to me as the delivery guy. We kind of had it all sewed up.
Fantastic journey there. So to clarify for the listeners then, so Knotted Commerce, yes. Obviously you've come from that background, working in a very corporate back in the day, and then a vast range of experience working with a lot of big brands, working for a very specialist agency, Patchworks, and then spotted an opportunity where, if I'm not mistaken, where you've got these merchants that need this very, very, very specific specialization, which is sort of connecting the merchant with a product, with a Patchworks in that instance, but it's sort of the bit in the middle that a lot of people is sort of make or break. If that's not done right, that sort of consultancy piece, connecting the right thing, is it the right, doing the right amount of due diligence, and looking at what is needed for what might be a fairly large organisation, but 50 million can soon go to 200 million, 300 million, or whatever it may be. So you're like the guy in the middle, or the team in the middle, that's consulting between these fairly successful founders. Obviously, there'll be an array of different customers, I'm sure. But fairly savvy businesses that have seen it all, heard it all, and have looked at every platform. We can list them all off, and are maybe just making some decisions, but they need a trusted advisor, a trusted team, sort of to connect them to their next sort of phase of growth, and sort of be that team to help manage that connection with a new platform or a new set of tech. I was looking at your site. Obviously, I'm pretty aware of what you do, but we know that, for example, quite often clients will come along and they're on one or two. We're doing Google Shopping, we're doing Amazon. But you're not doing it in another country. Okay, do you realise that with 4 or 5 more marketplaces and 20 more countries, we just opened up 100 more opportunities? And that's the sort of thing you're doing, isn't it? Some big levers.
Yeah, I think the way I position it in particular is to say it's to provide the access to best of breed technology and to future-proof businesses' growth or change of direction or optimization. And you can only do that if you don't just go headlong into some big custom build that may take a couple of years. You've got something very custom, then you go, right, well, we've outgrown it 6 months later, what do we do next? So being on that front line of an iPaaS business, which was Patchworks, and seeing the value you can bring by then effectively creating that myriad of bringing best of breed technologies in.
Like a composable.
It's the whole composable ecosystem. I kind of coined that. It's probably out there myself, but we talk a lot about composable commerce, and everyone now knows the value of that. Say, right, there's all of these different businesses that do specialist things very, very well, and to get hold of that technology and plumb it all together is the composable commerce. And when you've got a great, scaled, sustainable, stable, user-rich experience there that's plugged all these things together, that's composable commerce, and it's bringing it all together. But I say, well, you still need the businesses to bring all that together, and we haven't quite got that right. We're getting there very fast. There's a lot of, I feel it in all of the, the e-com collab clubs and all the rest of it, that hive mind mentality is ripe. Everyone wants to work together now. Yeah. But at one point, you've got the idea and the buzzwords of composable commerce, but to knit it together, you want that composable ecosystem. So all of us businesses that specialize in those specialist technologies need to then work together. So the two need to go hand in hand. It's all well and good that you might be able to plug all these systems together, but you're going to be scratching your head to find who can do that if you're waiting on a full service agency to come good and say, I'll do it. So I'm trying to piece the two together to say the technology now all connects together, but technology is always just the enabler. The people, the business with the people in it that then know how to connect those things together and why and in what order and in what time frame, there's the gold dust to then help a business scale. And it's
very
a
exciting business, Ady. That very exciting, because I think that's as you're saying it, and a few of the episodes I've done recently, there's a real gap there.
There is a gap,
which I think obviously a few months in, you're doing very well at. So
and I've seen that gap because I've had to come flooding over to me while I was at Patchworks to say we're in a mess here, or we don't know what to do, or we need the advice, or we've got stuck. It's just providing that service as a focused full-time business.
So let's just step back a little bit. So I think the people that will be listening in, we've got all different founders at different stages of their journey with agency, and we talk we talk a lot about £1 million. There's £83,334 reoccurring as your £1 million. But agency, obviously, however you skin it. Whether it's lots of projects or retainers. I'm obsessed with retainers in a healthy way, but but obviously project work as well. But step me through the sort of how the retainer project, how you share what you're willing to share. I think it's really insightful to our listeners that are sitting there. They've maybe hit the mill, trying to get to the 2, the 5, the 10, or there's all different scales of agencies out there. But we talk a lot around this sort of 1 to 2 to 3 mil agency land. There's obviously all different conversations outside that, but you've obviously grown very quickly. From 0 to a run rate of £1 million-ish coming in 8-9 months. Talk to you about how you decided on the billing and how and the rates.
Sure. So you're right. Effectively, our business starts as a project-based business. It's about going to customers and say, you need all this technology tying together. We can do that. It's time and material, kind of, or a fixed price, depending on how you do it. We're gonna estimate and quote it based on the effort. That effort is about people. And that means that then when you start the next month, then it's back to 0 and you go again and you look at your capacity and all the rest of it. So that's the starting point. But one of the key value adds of our business is to say, look, we all know it, whichever part of the spectrum you're on inside the agency land for e-commerce businesses, nothing stands still. And particularly when you're boasting like we are as a business that we will connect together your trading platforms, that is so important to stay live, then the retainers come in 2 ways then. The retainers come in a support package, and there's various ones that we provide. From light touch all the way through to far more a partnership kind of. I call them from support
consultancy more.
So instead of like the gold, silver, bronze, because they're quite different, I've got the entry level support is all about keeping the lights on. You don't need to be looking at your tech stack. We will. It's support. Then the next stage is on from that is more the agency model, like retainers, which is then, well, what do you want to do next? We can guide you. So it's then baking in extra hours of consultancy and execution time to connect the rest of their platforms together to optimize it. Proactive. So it goes from support through to optimize through to growth. And depending on where the customer is on their journey, they'll want one of those kind of comforting arms around them. And that's where the MRR comes. That's where that monthly recurring revenue.
The start of maybe 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 months projects. Obviously, it'll vary. Something's then live. That's delivered. But obviously, you're discussing retainers right at the early stages. So it's the conversations that are very much part of the sales process at the beginning.
Yeah, and absolutely, the reason it's part of the sales process at the beginning, I've spoke to many. I'll kind of come on to it later down the line with all the questions, I'm sure. I spoke to many e-com agencies since starting Knotted, but also while I was at Patchworks, about, if you're going to do the integration, how are you then going to support? It's one of those things, the minute you've done it, the customer is not going to let you go. It's so important. If that goes down, they're going to be ringing you. How are you going to support that? Have you thought about it? And most e-com agencies that are there building the websites or whatever that might take on some of the integration, they've kind of paused for thought and said, not really thought about it. Maybe we'll put it into our retainer. And my provocative question back there is always, well, you get a very enthusiastic and emotional founder that's got millions of pounds riding on something that's just broken. It's their baby. They don't want to discuss
for 2
what
days.
Hours they're going to, for a couple of days about the potentially what the fix is, or do you use the retainer hours that you're going to use for consulting? You don't do that. You need a very specific integration support tier that's drilled. You've got your SLAs and SLOs, and you've got your tiered response rates. All the rest of it needs to be nailed down, and you need to be talking about that at the point where you're talking about the project. Say, when we go live on this date, you need a period of hypercare to deal with the snaggings, and then you move into some business as usual level of support, because you can't afford not to fix when something breaks.
It's pretty obvious when you lay it out like that, isn't it? We're going to build this thing, but there's nobody there to whether you just need the base support, whether you want growth and proactive work. So it just comes hand in hand. So pricing model, then we've got this project piece at the front, which can vary from obviously I guess a few days. Actually, going back a step, do you charge for initial sort of project discussion?
We have done once. It all comes down to it's one of them classic "it depends" kind of answers. A lot of the work that we do, and because when I say, I should clarify, as we're a specialist integration agency, that's all we do. I don't go and build the websites. I don't do the marketing, the SEO, any of the creative, none of that. And I won't hire for that. And I'm purposely out there in the market to say, we don't do that. I want to be hive-minded and do a specialism, be a specialist, work with specialists. It's too expensive to do full service, in my opinion, and the output's not that great. If you try and do everything, you're going to have a weak spot. So we are just there to do the integrations. And for those bigger digital transformation projects where a business might be literally ripping out their entire tech stack, we can then go in, and we are doing one right now, where to say, okay, let's break that down into kind of MVP through to end goal 2 years down the line, what you're trying to bring together. And at that point, it makes sense to give a ballpark, and this is going way back to my old waterfall kind of days of a business analyst, ballpark ROM kind of, it's likely for your budgetary purposes going to be X thousands of pounds, but let's not worry about it too much. Let's only fix that in once we've got through a discovery phase. The discovery phase will be a fixed price of X, which will cover these outputs, these workshops, these amounts of hours of a consultant or consultants. At that point, we will turn that ballpark. You can have your outputs and you don't have to carry on at that point. You've got the blueprints effectively. You can choose at that point. We'll lock in a fixed price per phase at that point, because you then know you can be accurate with your quotes. And away we go. You can get to choose. The reason you charge for the scoping at that point is, one, because you could never be accurate enough on a big digital transformation project to just, we don't want to get a customer into trouble where you say, let's wing it. Let's say it's £20,000 and it turns out to be £200,000. No one wins in that situation. So as long as they understand that it's a big project that you're going to partake in that scenario, then everyone normally will go with it. So let's break it down, not overcommit. We all know expectations.
I guess that's where your specialism comes in, because they'd have thought about what they understand, and their experience, their knowledge of you've got this much experience. So like, I didn't think of that. Oh, in 2 years, what happens if we outgrow that warehouse? We need a new ERP for that, and then we've got to connect. And then there's talk of actually going into 20 countries. Oh, crikey. So we never thought about feeds. Oh, okay, feeds is a whole new thing. So the conversation might start here at 20K, but then the roadmap leads into obviously hundreds.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of doing it, like I say, being an integration agency that's iPaaS first. That's the beauty of that. It's future-proof and it's flexible, it's fluid.
Yeah.
So you don't have to know your 5-year plan. Yeah. It's good to talk about it up front so you know roughly where you're going, because then we'll give the best recommendations. But the point of it is to be kind of components that you add on.
Yeah.
And as long as you've not gone stupidly down a totally different route, then you're going to be fine, because you see it as a bit of a printer cartridge. That one's done with now. Let's plug the next one in. You don't have to rewire the printer. It's got its universal connector that you plug it into, and that's why we go via middleware iPaaS.
So I think brilliant kickoff there. We've got a very, very, very specialist agency, with a raft of experience, very, very literally like down the middle, and I've had a few conversations recently, and I'm thinking, I've got some clients for you straight away, or some conversations I've been having recently where there's a bit of a gap, with merchants that are, and I think for the listeners, it's a real key takeaway, the specialist agency. We talk about it a lot. You said, not trying to do everything to everybody, some of the, especially in marketing, for example, there's 30 channels you can be an expert at. But you must have seen, obviously, working in, an agency, a lot of agencies that sort of maybe do quite a lot, So that was a conscious decision straight away, was it, right at the beginning?
Straight away, yeah. And I've probably been a bit too bold in saying I'm trying to see this not just as a business, but as a movement. Yeah. I genuinely do want us as a collective ecosystem to take away the pain points that we all live and breathe. If you're a full-service agency, you're doing too much, there's always something that you're like, we get into trouble there, or it's painful, or that's not where the margin is, or whatever. Yeah. I've spoke to loads and loads of e-com agencies at this point, and when I give my pitch as to what we do and why we do it, and I'm not going to go and hire people that could cannibalize your work if you was to work with us, and I'm going to need to pass that work back to you when they want the website or the visuals or the design or whatever it may be, or even the consultancy around getting you traffic in and all the rest. I'm not going to touch that. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm there as your guy, as your supporting arm when the conversation goes a bit like, well, we've got all these things we're trying to plug together. We go, I'm going to hand that over to Knotted, and we're going to sit in the middle and talk together, and we're going to offer our expertise at the same time and work nice and friendly in the middle together. I always say, for ease of maths, if there's £100,000 piece of work and you want to take it all, and in the past you'd have taken it all because we don't all work, commercials aren't great, and how you try and work together. You try and take all that £100,000, and then you think of an alternative situation where you only try and take 50. Well, that sounds ridiculous. Let's take the 100. But the 50 route may have meant you've got in and out within 2 months, and you've taken 30 of it in margin. Yeah. The 100 route might have meant you've been locked in for 2 years. You don't know how to get out of it. And you spent £200,000 and lost money. Yeah. So it's be brave, be friendly as an ecosystem, and work it all out between us, so that then the customer doesn't have to worry about that themselves. Yeah, they might see the value in getting specialists in, but then the next worry usually is, I've now got these 3 or 4 different businesses to try and work with at the same time. Let's us lot work that out between us, and then you go in with a unified front, and that's where I go back to that composable e-commerce ecosystem that I'm trying to build, and that movement. Say, let's do that for the customer before we get to the customer's door, and then you go in with a shrink-wrapped offer that might be 3 businesses deep.
I think it's brilliant advice, Ady. I think those that are listening, I think if you're on that journey to hit the mill, the 2 mil, I think you're not going it alone when you're doing it that way as well. You're building a partner network, depending on what listing in. If you're we have a lot of people in e-commerce listed in, but obviously there's a lot of agencies that do not e-com as well. But having those trusted half a dozen people, agencies, partners, obviously we made the mistake if we were at, it's just years ago now, we had like 100 odd partners. It's like, we just can't manage this. We can't manage this. So we were like, right, okay, for the different ICPs that we work with, we've got different partners, obviously different scale, different size. If they're doing a 5 million a year, that's a certain size. If we're doing 50 million, their requirements are very, very different. We're not going to send them to the same dev agency or the same design. Maybe not. what's the sort of headcount of an agency, what, very, very deep specializations for very specific things. You build those relationships. It then works both ways, doesn't it?
100%.
Because that's my next question is sort of like new business. So I assume the majority of the leads come from, your existing relationships with, where you've worked before, where your other co-founders worked before.
Yep.
But, what would you say about lead gen, consistent new business coming through? What's a couple of tips you could give to the listeners?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The initial platform that we stand on is with our own black book of contacts, and we've done it for a lot of embarrassingly good businesses. So that's been a real good head start for us. But the long term is all about that partnership goal. So when we're talking lead gen, it should always be a circular piece. Yep. I want to know your business intimately, not just as let's get a 20 e-com agencies that build websites and now just spin a wheel and decide which one I might throw a customer to. Because if it's the wrong agency, or for the agency it's the wrong customer, that was a pointless introduction. So, for example, we're integrating, we're just about to go live, or we are going live right now with the Jacuzzi Group, doing all their integrations. They don't have an incumbent web agency. They're interested in talking to one. Now, I picked the person to go and speak to. So through the Ecom Collab Club, which I love, and speak to all the, you get the anecdotes and you understand the businesses more intimately. I just learned through chance, talking to Ross at Strafe Agency, CEO at Strafe Agency, that they specialised in kind of single product immersive, conversion. So, and he'd done some work for Hot Tub business. It's a no-brainer. My Jacuzzi Group customer will feel thankful and feel the value I'm adding by listening to their needs, listening to my ecosystem and all the businesses within it, so they don't have to, and say, you need to speak to this business. So it's less about the old world of referrals and contracts and all, partnership channel management. I've passed you two, you now need to pass me one. I want it to be more organic than that. And I'm always going to have a customer that I can't service 75% of their needs.
Yep.
So I'm going to pass that 75% of their needs out to the right place. But at the same time, I also appreciate that this isn't the sexy stuff. If I'm going to try and get the attention of a business that's not in dire needs of architecting and all the rest of it, they're probably more interested in talking to a more creative agency that's talking about how to bring in get their conversion up or bring in traffic. So I'm not going to get into that conversation. So I then in turn need that relationship with the agencies to say, right, I'm talking to this customer. We can only actually win it because we've found that we've got lots of problems beyond the surface.
That Hot Tub's a very specialist thing, isn't it? Straight away I'm thinking, my brain's probably like yours was when Hot Tubs. Well, I think, it's very, obviously it's a high value product. It's a big purchase. There's probably finance involved at the end user. So there's a finance element, plug-in tech required. You've got multicolour inside, multicolour outside. Have we got some sort of colour chooser we can create? That's a whole piece for some 3D modelling, branding, design. So that's who have I got for that?
Yeah, that's it.
Finance, bang. But then my mind goes, this is where I'm thinking, that's Jacuzzi. They then have a network of distributors, retailers, probably, I don't know the numbers, 30, 20, 30, 40, 50 in the UK and every other country you can think of. So there's Jacuzzi, but then there's a network of dealers that are selling these things. So there's then local SEO that you could have, and then the list goes on. The next thing you know, you're thinking of your network of partners. Well, I've got a local SEO guy. Well, they didn't ask for that, but that you'll be able to help. There's not just maybe them, but their wider network, their distribution network.
That's it.
And then you're obviously building this. This group of partners, and everyone's winning.
Active partnership, And if you think about it, all they're busy businesses, right? If you're Jacuzzi Group or your lounge underwear, whatever, busy businesses, you're dealing day to day with all sorts of things. You don't want to then have to try and keep this perfectly up to date set of businesses you might want to talk to for different. Leave that to us to work it out between us and work hard together. And then we become that Rolodex for the end customer, and then they start to learn that movement. And there's no fear. I know there's fear right now of if I'm working with 4, 5, 6, 7 different businesses, that feels like a nightmare to me. It's our job to make that not feel that nightmare, and it will just become the norm where they just go and pick out, like they do with tech now, and go, well, I don't need to buy in one big monolith that does everything, and some of it's going to be a bit rubbish, but I've got to accept it. I can go and pick these startup businesses that do one thing really well. And it's then up to us to make that accessible by taking away the fear of, oh God, is this going to be difficult to work with so many businesses? So that's what.
Great. I think some great insights there for the listeners around, obviously starting an agency with that experience. I think there are a lot of people listening in that have, either worked in corporate, worked at an agency, starting their journey so far on and think, oh yeah, we'll take that work, but really, should you take that work? I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, but it's difficult in the early days, isn't it? I think when it's a 20 grand deal, it's not what we do, but we'll figure it out, sort of thing.
But but what happens with that is you took that 20 grand deal, and you might need to, you might just have to. Yeah. But if it was a choice, but it felt scary not to, then you've always got to think of the missed opportunity while you're bogged down in that 20 grand work that's going to take you all of your time and absorb you. You could have probably done lots of 20 grand work that's in your sweet spot. So let's be brave and go, you know what? Yeah. When's right to say no and bring... Yeah. Because you're no longer saying no. If we get this movement in this community right, it's no longer a no, go and Mr. or Mrs. Customer, find another way. It's no from me, but this is who will say yes.
We can't help you, but... Yes. And they'll respect that.
It's no longer a full stop anymore if we're all working together. It's passing it around. And then going back to your point about lead gen, it's such a cobweb then. It's such a spider web of every conversation probably creates 5 more in the ecosystem. So it should just... like a flywheel, just kind of take care of itself.
Snowball.
That's it. A referral snowball. It's like a cocktail.
I'll
Christmas cocktail.
Snowball, please. Yeah. So let's change direction a little bit. Sure. I think we've talked very much about this sort of the focus of the agency, very, very specific. We talk about that a lot. I think great, covered that. And you've found a gap in a very unique area of ecom. Fantastic. But then to staff that and man that, and hiring, in a relatively very short space of time. I know you do a lot of work with sort of outsourcing and global teams. Can we talk to us about that? Because I think that's really a really interesting topic.
Yeah. So first of all, I think through I'm lucky for the journey Knotted's going on. I'm lucky in terms of the blueprint I got from Patchworks because, as I said before, we kind of got COVID rich and we got a lot of customers fast. Yeah, there was this kind of mushroom happened in 2020, and we went from, I think I was about the 20th person into the business at that point, and we transformed at that point to probably 18 months later we was 120 people inside the group. Wow, with investment just coming in at that point, and it's the growing pains of being successful, right? It's like the biggest, most frightening problem to a growing business, although it's a good problem to have, is resourcing. And it was all trial and error and finding the right engineers inside the UK. So I've now probably got a heat map of, although we went up to 120 people, there's lots of people that then left inside that time. There's lots of people that I probably interviewed that weren't right for it then, but maybe now. So I've got a heat map of probably 200 integration engineers that no one else has got that heat map of. That I'll know where to go. I'm already doing it. I've plotted the next 2 or 3 hires based on that network already.
What you need and
so that's the fundamental core team to just do that considered growth around a core team to make the business sustainable early doors. And we're at about 11 people now. I think another person coming in, the 12th person coming in September. So that's the nucleus of the team. It's always going to be UK based. Team for the reason that it's a consultative-led business, so you've got to be in front of the customers, guiding them through knowing their business. That's where the magic is. It's not the keystrokes to connect the iPaaS to all of these other systems, because anyone can do that and you could do it badly. It's the nuance, it's understanding their business, it's providing the recommendations and then doing it. So that's UK-based. Where I go to outsourcing, and it kind of started by accident, and there's various videos of me talking to camera in my LinkedIn feed down the line about my journey through that, so I'll let people find that rather than take up too much time here. But it started when I was at Experian. I saw it done very badly, offshoring, and it was just where's the cheapest resource and lots of them, just go and grab them, and it just never worked as far as I was concerned. So then when I went into my first agency, and we started to look at, well, you'll know very well, in the agency land you can be very peaky and trophy with work when it's coming in before you get to a magic retainer amount. You can end up in a situation where, you've got too much work on, but the next month it might not be there. And I don't want to be in the I don't want to be in the position where you overhire, you overcommit. There's too many businesses in that position right now, bigger businesses that you look and you see the horrifying 100 people laid off. How you end up with 100 too many people?
We saw it a lot, didn't we? Or we still are.
Still are. So that's where I look at outsourcing, and I've done every model going through one way or another in different businesses, just through needs must, like spikes of business. Where am I going to get this done? When I was at Prodigious, they had obviously a wealth of money in teams in different locations, so I just ended up acquiring and having to make work teams in Ukraine, in Costa Rica, Colombia, Mauritius, and I had to knit that all together and work out how that works. So I've got a blueprint in my head of how to make borderless kind of development work. And the best way I found is to have specialisms. You kind of talked about it a little while ago. It's have a hub rather than just, okay, let's just collect people and they all do the same thing. So where's that going to, what is this team in this location going to do?
Yeah.
And it might be a full service team that's looking after a market. Yeah. Or it might be a specialist team that's where you do your front end and that's where you do your back end and that's where you do design, whatever it may be. And so I found when I was at Patchworks, we'd grown to the point where we had 50 customers in Australia and then growing amount of customers over in America. And you thought, well, at the time I had to get a bit of good faith from the team and then have to go on to a bit of a elongated rota, and it just didn't feel right. You got really skilled individuals that you're basically having to make work a night shift. So that's where I go to the outsourcing model, is to say, if you end up in a business where you've got 24/7 operations, or you can compartmentalize a specialism, then look at your options. And don't offshore, because offshoring, the dirty side of offshore and the world of just where's a price point that's just dirt cheap and all the rest of it. Look to outsource where there's record of employment, HR, finance, legals wrapped around these individuals in a location, and start looking in the universities to see what's coming out of the universities. In these locations. And find what's good in each location. I know I was struggling. I got to the point, I've got my heat map of integration engineers.
But they're more UK.
They're all UK based, but then those engineers aren't necessarily the best for customer service. So they'd be doing brilliant work, fixing very complex issues, but the customer's like, what's going on? So I then learned, well, to deal with the 24/7 instead of them working through the UK hours, through the UK night, and to have better customer service that's providing that constant iterative, this is where we're up to, while the engineers are deep inside the code. I start to build out the idea of outsourcing that specific team, so the customer service team that could work across hours. And that's what I built at Patchworks, and that's what I'll do again at Knotted, because I want to make sure that I'm not that business that did the feast and famine, overcooked it, I'm now starting to shrink down permanent members of staff, because in these outsourced
businesses, the worst thing is that I think as any founder doesn't want to let anybody go, but obviously you go through these peaks, which obviously we're talking about COVID and whatnot. But then it's like, I saw, I keep an eye on sort of certain agencies' headcount. You go to LinkedIn, click on people, and you get the graph down. You saw this COVID graph, and then a couple of agencies I know of. I don't know them that well personally, but they went like from almost not a lot to 100 and whatever, and then they went back down to 50. So they let like 50 people go, or 50 people left. A bit of a mix, I'm sure. But to navigate that, just as a co-founder, let alone the 50 people you've got, your 50 sets of families you've got to consider, and which I would, I would hate to be in that position. But just overhire, and obviously. Sort of the salary things went a bit crazy, didn't they? Especially in dev and your side. Some of the stories I heard of, just ridiculous. But to be able to manage that better, that growth better, or mix in with, more refer to them maybe more of like an international mix of people. But you're saying, to be clear then, so you could potentially work with universities and then hire, 1 or 2 to start in that area? Or?
So I say that's the approach, but the way to do it is to then wrap it with a specialist business, in my opinion. So in the same way that I was saying, let's all us in the e-com space do what we do well, the approach is to go, well, where is good for this? There's no point going in, investing in a country and then go, well, I got the 3 people and then no one else is coming out of university doing that skill. So what was the point? You're only going into that model if you're looking at scale, in my opinion. So you've got to make sure that there's a pipeline of talent.
Yeah.
But although that's the approach, get the specialists in to do it. So for example, I'm a NED at a business called the Dev Team based out in the Philippines, in Manila and Bacolod.
Yeah.
And it's a UK founded co-founder with a Filipino co-founder came together. I say take the hard work out. Make sure you do the right approach. So make sure you're not just going to blindly go into something. But when you know the questions you want answers to, that's the important bit. Get somebody else to answer them questions for you, which is where you go to these outsourced businesses.
So working with specialist outsource.
Yes, I'm potentially coming to you into your market, investing money into a team. This is my potential requirements. I want to start with 2 to make sure it works and train the trainer and understand my business. Then I'm potentially going to grow to 6, 7, 8 in this time frame. Yeah. Lay all that out. Yeah. The skill set that you're going to need. Yeah. Give your culture and values, because the outsourced business should be specialists in knowing how to kind of adopt that. And become an extension of you, and then you'll feel it out. And I did it when I was at Patchworks. I had 3 different agencies that I was talking to, outsourced agencies I was talking to in different locations. I had my tick boxes, price points, the culture, the value, the different commercial models they could do, the flexibility, the types of skill sets and all that. And then I picked, and I went there, and it went so well through that business. That's why I've ended up as a NED on Dev Team, because they were so good that I thought, I've danced around this topic for so many years. They're specializing in it. Yeah. They seem so hungry to do it well. Yeah.
So you're paying them and they're paying the team, yeah?
Yes, because then they get the employee.
They're navigating all the local law, HR, payments. So you're paying them one fee potentially to pay your 4, 5, 10 people.
Because every market will have totally different.
I think that's brilliant advice. Better advice. Something we have a lot of conversations internally about that.
And then that typically means you're not going to go and get the $30 a day. But you shouldn't be. In my opinion, ethically, you shouldn't be looking for it for that reason. Yeah, agreed. Maybe you've got a wrong price point if you need those really cheap resources. Yeah. It's not about cheap resource. It's about talent. Yeah. Where is that talent? And you either need to cover geographical time zones or you need to cover specialisms. Yeah. That's why you should outsource and then choose for that reason. We could talk for 12 hours about ways of outsourcing. But
no, I think that's great. So we covered some great ground. Obviously, the structure of the agency, I think getting that right at the front end, as we start on the journey, it's always a really challenging piece. And then we talked about the people piece. Fantastic insights there on building that international team and some ideas there. Something that's given me a few things to think about. Now, we're going to change direction a little bit, and we're going to talk about sort of working with particular brands and companies around funding. Okay. What would you say, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing that some of the people you've worked with around scaling? And obviously that's very much what you do, is help companies scale. So how has that sort of helped your agency, and how's that sort of fitting into your...
Yes, they're quite different lenses I look through in that respect. So we absolutely as a business help businesses scale, but I'm way away from their finances and all the rest of it. It's just about their future proofing and keeping flexible and being able to be cartridge led, plug in, take out, and all the rest of it. So I wouldn't say I get too much from the customers I deal with in terms of how I can then take that back into my agency. Because I'm really only scaling them from a technical capacity, really. The rest is behind the scenes. I don't see what they're doing with their money. But I've got a pretty rich recent experience of how I will potentially be scaling Knotted through or not. The do's and don'ts based on what we did at Patchworks. And I think, so for there, we went through, I think it was the 4th round just as I was leaving, definitely 3 rounds I was heavily involved in, VC Series A funding. And that was just a conscious decision at the time. We bootstrapped up until that point.
So how many people were they at the point where it started?
We were probably at... Now we're talking, I think we were between the 20 to 50 people mark, was ramping quite a lot, quite quickly before any funding came in. But we'd already talked about we're going to need to take investment if we're going to capture this flag. Then when the investment came in, it grew again. So there was a period it was already growing quite quick before the funding could come in. Obviously, that can take a while to go through the due diligence, find the right firm and all the rest of it. But personally, for me right now, I think what it gives me is the knowledge of what's available and it's more about when, like when would you go that far? I wouldn't want to distract the business too soon into going VC kind of led or anything like that at this point in time. I think because what I've learned through scaling Patchworks is there's an awful lot, especially for me who was the COO, there's an awful lot of a transition you've got to go through from this creative founder-led business that's just doing whatever you feel is right on quite minimal amounts of data and metrics and insights. You're going a lot on instinct, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you've been in the market for so long, instinct's probably a good thing. To then getting a VC in, and it's obviously very scientific, and you've got to be by the spreadsheet, reports monthly and all the rest. And that's a very big culture shock.
Yeah.
And it took some transition and some learning. The first come in, you do the due diligence, you've got to go through a 100-day plan. So I know all these steps, and I took that in. What I'd say is there's definitely, to get you away from the edge of feast and famine, getting some investment in at the right time, I'd say is going to be key for most businesses if you're in that fortuitous position where you can't go fast enough to catch what's coming in.
Yeah.
I don't think bootstrapping at a certain velocity would work. So I'll bootstrap as far as I can to be considered growing organic business.
Yeah.
But at the point where it looks like loads of work's coming in, I think you'll fall over if you're trying to pretend to your customers that you can offer all these things, but you're actually just trying to grab one by one individually into the business. So I would say investment is key at that point. I only really know angel investment or Series A. At the point of getting in a Series A investment, what I found to then navigate through that, and I would do again if that's what I choose to do with Knotted, is typically you're working, like I say, on instinct. Then you've got to work very much in a scientific manner to be feeding back the information and the hygienic reports and all the rest of it to your VC. You're going to be bringing in board members at that point in time. And the crucial point there is, how do you keep going at pace without losing the creativity of the potential of the founder, which for me, I had a very creative founder in Dave Wiltshire. But you've then got to bring in some rigor. You can't just you can't do gut feel when you're bringing in 100 people and you've got all these 300-400 customers on your books, and you've got millions of pounds being sent into the business from founders. So I found the EOS framework, the entrepreneurial operating system, was perfect. It allowed me to face off to a creative founder and let all the ideas keep flowing.
Yeah.
At the same time as putting in some rigor, putting in some structure that allows you to create a cadence that's not just boom and bust and do whatever the hell we feel is right. It's making you condense your business down to, one, your culture and your values, so how you hire and be a bit more conscious about the kind of people you're bringing in, but then when they're in the business, how they feed the business goals. And I've found that in other previous businesses, in hindsight, the two are disconnected. So you might have the notion of giving KPIs or a 6-monthly targets to your team, that it might not necessarily be what your company's goals are. So you've got to cascade those down, and I find that through EOS. So set out at the start of the year, whatever your calendar year or financial year, whatever it may be, set out your vision for the year, look slightly ahead of the year, but then start condensing down to your 90-day kind of plan, 3-monthly, quarterly, turn that vision into traction. What are those OKRs? So your objectives, key results for your business for those 3 months that go towards your North Star of the year, and translate them into, well, what does each individual or each team in the business need to do to achieve those company OKRs? That cultural shock is quite big. So you've got how you adopt it and cascade it into the team, and then they're seeing a very different identity without wanting to scare them away. That was tricky but necessary. So that's what I found for scaling, where you find you can't bootstrap anymore. You've got to bring investment. It's the culture shock. It's changing from creative gut instinct to scientific led, but without too much stuffiness there, and don't break your creative flow. EOS
so obviously, when did you? So EOS, what's that? How many years ago? Or did you bring that out? 3 years ago?
About 3
years. So sort of a couple of years managing that at Patchworks, and now it's you're bringing that into your own agency now.
Yes. I use it right from the get go. I use it in my NED role at the dev team as well, where we're doing a bit of an identity piece. How do we pivot? What's the core values and the vision? Turn that into 3. That's how I start any business. You don't need investment. You don't need to be on hyper growth for that. It's just a way. And I did a post not long ago about making a bit of sense of your meetings. Like there's yearly meetings all the way down to daily meetings. make sure you're doing the right things in them meetings. And I got a lot of that from EOS. It's organising my mind, and I'm that kind of person that needs to compartmentalize and organise into what am I doing at what time, what am I thinking about on any given day, week, month, year, and how do you cascade that into your team? Because if you don't do something like in an EOS framework when you're scaling, you're going to become a very burnt out, busy founder. Because my analogy would be, you've gone and bought a bigger house now because you can afford it. You've got all these rooms and you've got all these, your team are in it, but you're the one that's got the paint pot and the brush, and they're just sitting in there waiting for you, and you're then getting frustrated that you want it to be a nice pink colour and a nice yellow colour, and you're running around trying to do it all. Give them a paint pot, give them the context and the vision, the value of what you're trying to do as a business, and then all them rooms will happen at the same time. And that comes from having a framework in place. And because, like I said at the start, being a corporate to start with and not really liking it, I was very hypersensitive of not going too far, and EOS was perfect.
Did you find, we talk about EOS on a few different episodes of the other podcast, and so obviously you identified EOS and you're right, we're going to run with this, and anybody listening, I would employ you to read Traction.
Yes.
Gino Whitman is the chap behind all this, and so then you sat down as with a set of founders or senior management and sort of, right, what is the 3-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, and how we're going to then break that down, and then what did you then present to the whole company, the vision?
Yeah, I think
as it suggests.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not as grandiose as this at this point because it's still such a small business. But the idea of town halls, you've got to. It's that difference between managing and leading, and leading through context versus leading through instruction. And I believe very much in context. Because there's going to be a bunch of bright people around me that's going to throw me some curveballs or some wider opinion that makes us better for it. You're not going to get that if you're just giving a bullet list of instructions, go do these things. So, no, this is what we're trying to achieve. So the team are completely bought in. They understand we're a very transparent business.
And that's the reason you do it, isn't it? Really, you're trying to obviously, I think there's nothing worse when I see, people working for firms and they're maybe just in a box over here. They have no real connection of why they're doing the thing they're doing, what the impact is in their department, that department on the bigger picture. Whereas you run it on EOS, and the founders or the founding team or the management are open in, explaining, in detail, the vision, the 1 year, the 3 year, your OKRs. You, as an individual, then should buy in more and have more passion for the firm you're working for. So in turn, that helps with retention. But obviously, when you first present that vision, I think some conversations I've had, and my own experience, you present that vision, and not everyone is on the bus, and you think, oh, okay, but then you find out who's who a bit, don't you?
I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
it's perfectly fine, because I've wasted so much time in so many businesses where you're trying to prize people into a certain way of thinking or being or behaving or whatever. What's the point? There is a business that's perfectly suited for them. It's that analogy of don't get a fish to climb. And in EOS, there's that point of everyone's got a number. If everyone's comfortable with what their number is and what they bring to the table.
Do you put numbers on your
I haven't got them for everyone at this point in time.
We don't do that.
No. But and again, so that's where I'm kind of EOS light. I think there's something that I wouldn't.
It's like all these frameworks, isn't it? We could list 20 books right now, and they'll all be great, but you take your bits.
Yeah, you do.
But I think EOS is probably the top recommendation, but you don't necessarily have to do the 10 out of
you don't have to do every
7 that suit you, the 6, 7.
I like to take the approach. So that idea of everyone's got a number, I go, okay, I don't want to define a number because that's quite scary. A salesperson, fine. A support engineer, what number do you want to give them? You want to give them the notion of what that number would be. So if you achieve these types of things, if this is what you're thinking about in terms of customer satisfaction, all the rest of it, we're going to do well. So it's less about the individual number. It's more about, EOS is telling me that it's not just the sales numbers or it's not just the support tickets. It's everyone in every role has got some kind of metric they should be thinking about. So, I don't go as far as the number, but I go as far as they know that there's a metric that makes a difference to the full business.
So they're getting more of a sort of it's like a detailed job description, expectations where, I want you to be doing this. If you're doing this, you're doing the job sort of thing. And if you're not, then you're not doing the job, so you're more than 4 out of 10.
And you could probably give 2 bits of context and say, go and achieve these things that would completely surpass a set of 20 instructions that you've got to try and put together for that person. You're not going to get much out of that. So give them the shining light of where we're trying to get to, and let them work it out a little bit to a point.
Well, thanks, Ady. Now, it sounds like you've had a hell of a journey, from obviously spending all those years in in an agency and also working for yourself. But I know, obviously, speaking to you off camera, you've had a challenging few months or so, and diagnosed with cancer. How's that been? Sort of managing that diagnosis, and sort of also you've just set up your business and trying to juggle everything.
Yeah, so I think so. It's testicular cancer, which I think getting over the initial shock. So it happened kind of very quick around Christmas period. Then I've got a big family there that we come together at Christmas, and I'm holding on to this kind of secret at the time. I didn't want to ruin anyone's Christmas, so that was kind of difficult. We was already midway through the transition of me coming out of Patchworks at that point, so it's not like I had to juggle work, but it was definitely a bit of a panic.
You were out, and you were about to
there's
start.
a panic of, well, now who knows? Am I going to be going through an elongated set of chemotherapy that's going to stop things? And not everything's a given. So even if you come out of it, Knotted Commerce wasn't necessarily going to be available to capture at that point in time. So while I was laying there, the cancer piece was quite brief for me. I'm very lucky. I've got a little bit of survivor guilt where I've had to go and sit in rooms every 3 months for checks, seeing people so much worse than me. So part of my story, and the reason I do talk about it, is to say, literally, when you talk about the symptoms, my first symptom was tiny in terms of physical symptom. I kind of brushed my hand across myself, found it wasn't a lump or anything like that. It was almost like a hardening. It was like a shell.
Correct.
It felt just different. It felt unfamiliar. My biggest symptom was this impending doom that I'd never felt. I'm not a hypochondriac or anything, but there was this instinctive, that's really wrong. There's something really wrong. Do something about it. And all this, go bury your head. You've got a busy day. Maybe ring them doctors tomorrow instead and get in. I thought, no, I've got to stay the course. And I just went through the process of getting checked. And then when I've come out the other end of it, it's meant that I've not had to go through chemo. They've got it out when it was still very small. So the actual brush with cancer at this point in time has been very, very brief. I've ended up unfortunate in terms of I had, during my surgery and post-surgery complications, and sepsis kind of kicked in, and I had horrendous pains for a couple of months and thrown back into hospital and all this stuff that meant I was bedbound when I wasn't supposed to be. It was meant to be 5 days bed rest, get up, start slowly getting into things. I had a bit of a dark period of 2 months where I was wanting to go and set up the business, start contacting all the customers, get my personal branding going and all the rest of it, so that, people are aware I'm out there doing something slightly different now, so to contact me. And instead, I was on a bed where I couldn't even turn to my side without excruciating pain. I'm fiercely independent person. I've got 3 kids. I make sure I cook, clean, do everything for them, so that my partner doesn't have to. Part of a split marriage. I've always been that way, and I put myself in a bit of a box where I must do everything. And I've then just been thrown into this situation in agony with drugs that were making me feel sick, to get rid of pain that didn't go away, with then a partner that's having to do everything for me, for my kids, for me, bring me food on a tray. And it was just horrendous. I just didn't like that feeling. Coming out of that, and now fast forwarding into, getting into building the business again and all the rest of it, the echo from the cancer is just to, zero tolerance for wasted noise and time and effort. We don't, it's not like I didn't feel like I had a brush with death. I definitely felt mortality, but I didn't feel like I was close to death, nothing like that, and cliche like that. But it makes you not waste your time because of, not about how much time I got left, nothing like that, just to do with how much energy and emotional energy had to go into it. Yeah, what's important. And, I won't go too far into story, I will cry, how I broke the story to the kids and those memories of how they broke down and all the rest. That's what I hold dear, to go, there's no time for that today, because that was so much more important. So get on with it. And it's making me just move on and move on and move on and cut out the noise, the unnecessary. And that's what we're trying to then build as part of the business, is say there's zero time for nonsense. Time is valuable because, it's more the emotional energy and the effort it put into your work is valuable. Yeah. So let's make every bit of that count. So it's not as cliche as it probably sounds. It's more about zoning in. I talk to people about it's almost like a spidey sense now. I feel like when you know Paul Parker got bit with a spider and everything's clear. I've got this clarity, and I've got all this learning from 25 years of business that's now been put into this calm demeanour of knowing exactly what steps I feel like I'm going to make with zero hesitation now.
Thank you.
But in terms of juggling it, I've never been one of these kind of work-life balance. This is work and then off, and then this is play. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone, but I've always had a bit of a fluid everything urges anyway. I am me. Part of me is my work.
Yeah.
And part of my personality and what I do outside of work comes into work. So I've just juggled the whole cancer. You know, I get bad backs, I get bad feet, I get bad knees off the back of complications from surgery that I have to go and train in physio. Yeah. It just becomes part of my life in and around work like everything else does, like being a dad does. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate it.
I'd just say everyone get checked, because that's why I've still got hair and didn't have to go through chemo, and the risks of what chemo do to you, as much as it's a necessary thing. Yeah. If you can avoid that, that comes from, I was lucky, it was a cancer that you can avoid it. Yeah. The likelihood is I was going to need chemo, but because I hit it so quick and went straight in with the doctors, they just chopped it out.
So you had thought, something's not quite right, literally straight away, and it was straight in the doctor's treatment. It didn't mean you needed a chemo. Yeah.
That morning, I went onto the phone call to get an appointment at my doctor's. I was like 24th in the queue, nearly put it down. I went, no, don't sit for the half hour you're going to need to sit, and just went with it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Well, that has been a whirlwind, an absolute freaking whirlwind of an episode. I thank you so much for coming over.
I feel I need to apologise, because I tend to do that.
That's brilliant. I think it's been brilliant. So much there for founders that are on the journey, in the journey, you know, trying to hit certain targets, looking at, you know, hiring, internationalization, specialization, you know, new business. We've covered a lot of ground, you know, amongst, you know, a very tough personal 6 months or so. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. Okay. Ady, do you have a book you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
The first one you already said. I'd absolutely say to any agency founder or just senior manager that's trying to get to grips with their business is Gino Wickman's Traction. Yep. I think the next one, business related, would absolutely be Essentialism. Greg McKeown. It leans into the whole cancer stuff, I suppose. Yeah. It's about that. Don't just be a busy fool. Don't just fill your time with stuff because you feel like you should. Yeah. Be ruthless with your time and work out what makes most sense. It's written in a way that's so simple that you'll read it and instantly go, I know all this, but you won't practice it until you read it. So Essentialism by Greg, absolutely. And then just slight tangent from that, I read a lot of, because of what my partner does and because of some of the sports I do, I'm very much an outdoorsy guy. I like watching and reading about climbers and alpinists and all the rest
like
of it.
Adventures.
Adventures. So Doug Scott, he's got a book about when he summited Everest. He was a Nottingham-based climber from the 60s, 70s. But what I get from that, and I think any kind of founder and business owner can get, is, you know, life can be tough and you can push yourself. And those kind of stories where they've summited Everest or they've walked across the Arctic or whatever it may be, you're going to learn a lot about the human soul reading them stories. And it gives you some resilience to take into your business where you're not going to panic and stress and worry about some nonsense decision you need to make. You're just going to make it because these people are out there doing 10 times more difficult things than we do. So highly recommend go and grab an alpinist's summiting book. And you'll learn a lot about human condition.
Well, we'll link a couple up.
Yes.
Some of these ultra marathonists, if that's the right word. Yeah. Well, thanks, Ady, for coming on the show. For those that want to reach out to you, find out more about Knotted Commerce, what's the best way to do that?
So you can contact us on Knotted Commerce website, so knottedcommerce.com with a K. It's got a contact form if you want to get over. But I'm on LinkedIn a lot now, so just find me on there. Yeah. And I'm always prepared to talk. So DM me, contact me on LinkedIn or our Knotted page on LinkedIn, and we'll talk from there.
Lovely. Thanks, Ady. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for your time. Cheers, Richard.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. So you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.